All right, you ready to roll?
Yep.
Good. Three, two, one. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Dental Elevation. Wow, I messed that up. Where's my brain going, Jared? I don't even know where I am. All right. Three, two, one. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Elevation Association Experience Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Dan Nelson, and of course, with me is my co-host and partner, Dr. Jared Hill. We've got something cool lined up, Jared. What do you think about this second part of this multi-part podcast we're doing?
Yeah. Good morning. It's gonna be a fun one today. We're deep into these KPIs, talking about these key performance indicators to improve your practice, which will also improve your life. And we last time we gave a little introduction of what the KPI was, how to use it, how to analyze it, how to implement it, how to find it, all those things. And now we're gonna make these episodes pretty concise. We're gonna talk about one KPI in particular, which is cool. We're gonna eat on each of these next couple episodes, and we'll dive deep into it, like what it means, why you need to use it, how you should find it, how you can analyze it, and how you can implement it in your practice. And you can also maybe find a way to implement it in your life as well. So
I'm excited, man. These are cool, and I think that these have a high impact or high value. My allergies are on fire, so this should
springtime is
be fun
gorgeous out here,
today.
but yeah,
Oh,
man, can't
uh,
have, can't have enough Claritin, can we?
oh my gosh! Since going to Europe, they started a little bit there because all the trees were in bloom, and then did that trip down to Arizona for one of our base camps there in Prescott, and that's when it really because I used to live there, and that's when the allergies really kicked open, and now that we're back here, it's like allergies are on fire. So this should be a fun sneezy episode. I think that it'll be full of sniffing and sneezing and some tears, and I mean, what else does a podcast need? Well, let's jump into this one. So, um, this is the idea here, and our theme today is uncovering the real metric that drives profitability and sustainable growth in a dental practice. And really, what it is about hourly production, right? So, and I think it's important to ask the question, and I'm going to ask you this question, Jared, is how often in your career did you think about measuring your hourly production?
Yeah, it's all about the hourly production is all about, efficiency versus the typical traditional KPI or data point that a lot of practices use is your daily production goal, which is great. But your daily production goal is only tells you a portion of the story of what's really happening. Your daily production goal actually could be hiding the real story behind your practice's efficiency. Because if you do a daily production goal, doesn't mean anything. You can if you do that your daily production goal in 4 hours or 6 hours or 10 hours, that's a very different day than what a production per hour or your production per hour is. That's the real time measure of efficiency, is figuring out how efficient you are during the day. And and before I took a deep dive into these KPIs, I did focus on production goal, and I do think a daily production goal isn't a bad idea, but I think it's only a surface measure. It's like when you're trying to get in shape and you step on a scale, you look at the weight on the scale, but it only tells you a certain measurement, one certain data point. You actually have to dig deeper into it to realize how efficient you are. So I'm excited to dive deep into this production per hour, talk about efficiency and how dentists can make their day more efficient.
Well, a $6,000 day that takes, 4 hours versus a $6,000 day that takes 10 hours, that's a different ballgame altogether, right? So two very different types of days. Do you know anybody that's ever had like a daily production amount that they look for, and if they hit it, like if they schedule it out and it's booked out to hit it within 4 hours, they're done for the day? Have you ever talked to anybody that's done that?
No, but that would be awesome.
I haven't either, but I was thinking about it. I was like, and I get it because it's complicated because you have employees and stuff like that. So you'd have to really think about how to set that up. But What that would be freaking cool, like to talk to somebody. So if anybody's out there that hears this and they do that, we want to talk to you because that would be really cool to see how you've structured your your employee pay and how that all works. But yeah, I mean, efficiency is the name of the game today. So I mean, to calculate this metric is super, super simple. You just take your total production and then you divide it by your doctor hours. It's not hard. Like your total doc production. Because you want to see how, if you have a multi-doc practice, you want to see what's efficient, who's working efficiently, why isn't it getting efficient? Is someone taking some of the less efficient stuff? So an example is $5,000 in 8 clinical hours. That's $625 an hour, right? Um, and these things like, of course, Dental Intel just does it for us. We don't have to mess around with anything. You can just pull up the metric. Practice by Numbers will do it for you. Other data analytic companies can do those for you.
Which I think is an important tip, Dan. I think we can't just like kind of gloss over that, because if you don't have these outside software companies that are plugged into your system, your operating system, whether it be Eaglesoft or Dentrix, then you're manually pulling this data, or you're paying somebody to manually pull this data, which is, again, talk about efficiency. I love office managers and I love maybe treatment coordinators, but they have more important things to do than trying to pull up a report from Eaglesoft to put in the correct parameters, download it, enter it into an Excel spreadsheet. These things all take time that are just a waste of time and money. When you have it, you're paying a few $100 a month for maybe Dental Intel or Practice by Numbers or whatever outside software system you have to come in, pull this data, and then give it to you in a very readable form in this, they give it in front of this format that's just very easy to look at. And so that's I think that's the place to start is, where to find the data, where to find the production per hour. How do you find it? How do where do you start? I think that's a good place to start, is to figure out where are you getting your data, and then how to look at it just to see where your baseline is at, right?
Yeah, that's a funny conversation that I've had, I don't know, so many times, like a lot, with docs that are like, I don't need it. I don't need anything like that. My office manager pulls all that data for me. I'm like, do they? I'm like, okay, you're paying somebody to go digging through. Remember how we had an old office manager you asked? I can't remember what the metric was. It had something to do with patient count or something. And you're like, hey, I need this report. I need these numbers. And you walk downstairs and they were like on the
Yeah.
screen going one,
Yeah.
two, three,
Yeah.
four,
No, it was so bad. And I think at the time, I think we had Dental Intel. And she was like, we don't need Dental Intel. And I'm like, I'm not paying you 2 hours to pull this report that Dental Intel can provide me instantly like that. It's just there's a more efficient way to do it. And a lot of times we refer to that as the the your sacred cows. Your office managers don't want to be replaced. They don't want to feel less valuable because you're replacing them with this software or this AI tool, whatever it is. So it's just a matter of having that conversation of, hey, you are more valuable than this. The stuff you do outside of this is way more valuable. Let's rely on this tool in order to be more efficient as an office, so you can spend time doing what I want you to do. That's conversing with the patients, that's interacting, that's presenting the treatment plans, that's doing whatever it is that you have assigned to that person to do. It's having that conversation, which is sometimes threatening to some of your team members.
Yeah. And we'll get into here in a minute. We're going to get into like what we would rather have them doing, what we'd rather have them focusing on, where they can spend a lot more time and energy
Yeah.
towards efficiency. Um, so well, let's talk a little bit about what influences your production per hour. I think this is like on the surface, I think this is something that people are like, oh no, I get this and I understand it. But I think that as we talk about it more, um, there's some eye-opening thoughts that come across because I think personally that there's a lot of offices that the docs are just subject to whatever the schedule is, right? Like they're just whatever the schedule dictates, that's what they do. They're not proactive about that at all. But and I think that if low value stuff, and we've had a lot of conversations in our office about this, if they just start slapping it in everywhere, and I'm thinking it's specifically about an office up in Washington that's an EA client, that he's been super frustrated because they will continually put low value, just stack his day with low value stuff. There's no rhyme or reason, and what's worse is that they'll stick to things that he's like to, like, say, operative appointments where it's fillings at the same time. And it's like, I can't. So scheduling is a huge part of this. And um, so yeah, I think you have to kind of go back and say, okay, well, what's my procedure mix, right? So like, what are we doing as far as what does my procedure look like? Do I have do I have high value procedures in my day, and am I batching the low value procedures together? I know in dental school they taught us quadrant dentistry. That was a huge thing. Like, don't come and do onesie twosies, here's and there's. That's the end of day kind of stuff. But if you've got someone that's got, you know, four fillings in a quadrant, focus on get all those done, because you're going to be a lot more efficient in that appointment.
Yeah, you're speaking of your schedule. Really, your schedule is a mirror. It reflects your priorities. Whether you like it or not, it's going to tell you what you're diagnosing in hygiene. So if you go in and you're in a rush in hygiene and you go through and a quick exam, see a cavity, oh, it's an occlusal on 19, and then you walk out, that's going to end up on your schedule. And that's on you as a doctor. The hygienist hears you say you need an occlusal, whatever your process or system is, then just get that scheduled. If in 2 days from now or a week from now or a month from now, you have an afternoon appointment of an hour or half hour with one occlusal on 19, that's you. It's a mirror. It reflects your priorities. So when you're talking about batching, you're not talking about making up procedures. You're not talking about making up treatment. You're being comprehensive. And that's a mental shift to go into every single exam. And if you have two, three, four hygienists, sometimes that is exhausting. But to go in and do this exam where you say, okay, overall, I have to look at everything. Even if this patient has been a patient of mine for 10 years, I'm not going to cruise in. I'm not going to go in and sit down for 30 seconds. I'm looking at everything, and I'm going to batch these high value procedures. For every low procedure you say yes to, is a high value procedure you're saying no to a certain degree. So, for example, let me go in and give you an example. I just completed a veneer case 2 days ago. Um, we did 6 through 11. I like to do, generally speaking, 5 through 12, but we chose 6 through 11. But this was a patient who'd been a patient for a while, and I went in to do a hygiene exam, just a regular, annual exam, and I thought to myself, I need to slow down here. I got to slow down and really, really figure out what the patient wants, do a good job of doing comprehensive treatment diagnosis. And I sat down with him and I said, hey, you know what, Jerry, you would be a great candidate for some veneers. Have you thought about this? Are you interested in doing anything like this? It would be a good protection for your teeth, plus cosmetically, it would look gorgeous. And he's like, I've thought about it for like the last 20 years, but no one's ever said anything or mentioned anything to me. But if you think I'd be a good candidate, I would be very interested in doing it. And it was so easy and so interesting, but it was talking about, okay, what are my high value procedures? I need to identify what those are. And then two, I need to, when I go in and diagnose and do this comprehensively, I need to do what you're saying, this batching of these high value procedures rather than these low value procedures. You can't ignore the low value ones. And you can't just like not diagnose a cavity. That's obvious, but you have to be comprehensive in all that you do. So that's one aspect of making this production per hour more valuable to you rather than looking at the production goal per day.
Well, yeah, it's putting higher value on high value procedures, right? Like, I think if in our office, you maybe think about how we do it from the minute a new patient comes in the door, giving them that new patient form that we have them fill out, the new patient questionnaire. And one of the things that asks on there is, are you happy with your smile? I think that's an important question to lead in, because there is that thing where, do people get asked, do even get asked, and I think some docs are uncomfortable asking questions like, are you interested in veneers? Because they think they're, going to sound salesy or whatever, but that's a legitimate question. I think that's a good example, because here he's like, I've been waiting for somebody to ask me, nobody's bothered to ask me. And so, and then if you don't ask, they may not know that you do that. You know what I mean? Unless you are, bluntly stating it somewhere in your office, they may not know. And so for ours, it's, we ask the question of, are you interested in ortho? Are you happy with your smile? If not, how would you change it? What would you like to see changed? Because maybe it's surgical, maybe it's, just some veneers, and maybe it's ortho. And that leads into those questions. And I think if you don't ask, you'll never know. Are you happy? Does that missing tooth bother you? Have you ever thought about getting an implant? Do you know that we do implants? And then, that I think that kind of stuff, those are lead-in questions that I get it. Some people are afraid you're going to sound salesy, but if you're just asking questions, you're not pushing anything on anybody. You're just asking and saying, okay, well, these are things that we provide. Did you know we provide them? We'd be happy to help you if you have questions about this stuff, and this is a service we can provide for you. So I love that example. I think that's poignant and super a super great example. I think too, as we were talking earlier, and let's get into this now, is we were talking about what would we rather have our treatment coordinators or our office managers doing rather than going and pulling metrics and looking at that. They should be looking at metrics, but they shouldn't have to pull them. They should have something that's readily available. Um, and I think this is a kind of a mental hurdle for some people, is to get into this idea of block scheduling. Um, and whether you do a color coding or whether you do, however the heck it is that your office does it, this idea of block scheduling becomes really important. And for us in our office, what we have is um, so we actually color code ours, and we make sure that the high value stuff hits in the morning. And this was something I got to give a shout out to Dr. Steve Call over at Midwestern University, who is my mentor. He's the clinical dean over there, and he's like, look, if you want to maintain good production per day and not burn out, he's like, don't fill your schedule. He's like, don't do full days of all fillings. He's like, you'll lose your mind. He's like, find the high value stuff, do it in the morning, do your low value stuff in the afternoon. He says, you'll be glad you did it like that. He's like, because you need to be fresh for some of these big cases and some of these higher value procedures. And he's like, when we were new at the time, he's like, you're going to get to, and this has really become true. He's like, you're going to get to the point where you can do fillings in your sleep. He's like, do the high value stuff early, low value stuff in the afternoon. And that's something that we've done that's worked really, really well. And then again, going back to this idea of make sure you're clustering your low value stuff together. So you're taking a low value, potentially multiple low value things and turning that into a higher value appointment, by way of efficiency. And I think that this is something that conceptually is simple to understand until you start to try to block out your schedule, especially putting SRPs into the hygiene schedule and blocking that out, and having, if you've got multiple people in your office scheduling, it can get kind of hairy in the beginning. And so there really is a system that needs to go into place here to help things stay efficient and not freak out your entire team on, well, we only have an opening. Our next opening for fillings is in 3 weeks. We don't have anything for 2 months or whatever it is. And so that's what happened. At least what I've seen is you start to get full on your low value stuff. You're open in your high value blocks, and they'll just start shoving low value stuff back into your high value blocks, a week in advance, rather than allowing those to fill.
Yeah, this is a team effort. This is what you're referring to, Dan, is strategic scheduling versus reactive scheduling, right?
Totally.
So you're planning this out, and what I found, here's a pro tip for people who maybe are struggling with this or thinking about doing this. You in your EagleSoft or Dentrix or OpenDental or whatever system you use, manually go in, and there's a way to color code the blocks. You can still schedule somebody, but you have these little color codes that indicate what should be scheduled in that time period. Because if it's just in your treatment coordinator's mind or your office manager's mind, that leads to frustration because he or she may know what that schedule should look like. But if you're doing an emergency exam and an assistant is scheduling somebody, or if you're back in hygiene, you want to schedule somebody and they don't know the system very well, they're just going to be reactive and they're going to put somebody in the schedule where they think it fits, and that may mess up the entire thing. So it's important to communicate this with the entire team and to go over this and review this and say, okay, look, in the morning, you see how it says blue here for 4 hours, that's 2 or 3 or 4 blocks of crown preps. That's the non-negotiable for our office is, and whatever yours is you do not put anything in these blocks until the day of or the night before. Even if somebody has a filling and we're 2 or 3 weeks out or 4 weeks out, and I have an opening in 2 days, you don't feel that. You do not put the filling in that. We wait until the last moment in order to do that. You need to work out whatever system works for you. But that's a pro tip for getting everybody on the same page and not being frustrated that your schedule isn't reflecting what you want it to. So that's a great way to go about it.
I think the exception to that rule, Jared, that we've made is that we will on the beginning of those blocks. Let's say it's a two. So we do Zurich here. So we do we block off 2 hours for a Zurich crown. I know that some people do an hour and a half, whatever it is you block out for. We stagger ours so that we have because Jared and I both run 2 rows. So we stagger 2 hour appointments. That way our team can turn things over and we're not feeling so rushed. It's just the way we do it. It's not saying we're right or wrong with the 2 hours, but you could do an hour and a half, whatever it is you do. The point is that at the beginning of those appointments, the exception to the rule is that we will put emergencies in those. And because oftentimes those turn into crown extraction and graft, whatever. And so, and if it's not, if it's a low value and it's still day of, you can make that call and say, yeah, I'll go ahead and do it today. Or you can kick it down the road and be like, I'm still, I've got this other emergency that's coming in. Maybe it'll yield something higher. And if it doesn't, that's okay. You can still stack your decks or stack your schedule down the line. And so, I think that the emergency would be the one thing I would say you can tell your team that's okay to put that because typically an emergency is no longer than 15 minutes, if you're just diagnosing and looking, but it could kick to some nice production for that day to fill that higher production block. So that would say is the only exception. um, so any other thoughts on the scheduling aspect of this, Jared, making sure that people understand like who does the scheduling, I think is a big part, getting everyone. I think you brought up a really good point, and that's that if you're treatment coordinator or your office manager, whoever it is that is in charge of the schedule, if it's not the doc, that person needs to communicate really well with the rest of the team. And if you have other people scheduling, like we do in our office, then it needs to be explicitly communicated what each block is for and the rules of the engagement, like you were just saying. And I think that communication, if that breaks down, that's where docs start getting really frustrated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to know that. And I think it's important to know, to see where you're at as far as where are you as far as your production per hour? Like where are you at? Let's make a clarification as well, is there are a couple different ways to measure this. You can do production per hour or you can do production per visit, which is different because visits are sometimes half hours, sometimes visits are 2 hours, like you were saying, Dan. That's maybe another deeper dive into this metric and maybe for another conversation. But I wanted to touch on it a little bit because the more smaller procedures that you do that are low value, one, you're going to go insane. But two, you're also going to be losing money. It's not as productive to do that. So a good metric, and the reason why I bring that up is because if you pull a growth report from Dental Intel, it's going to actually give you your production per visit rather than production per hour. So you can take that and calculate it however you want. But I wanted to give the average metric, the average KPI numbers for the dentist production per visit. On the low end, that a dentist across the nation, according to Dental Intel, is going to produce $273 per visit. An average dentist is going to produce $460 per visit. And on the high end, you're going to produce around 660, 670 per visit. So, um, Ours started out around the higher end, but we're now closer to, it also depends on how much insurance you take. A lot of factors go into it, but now we're closer to $800 per visit is what we are. And that's just becoming more productive with your visit and more productive per hour. So another pro tip as we're talking about this and talking about scheduling and talking about the value of your treatment coordinator or office coordinator is when you're calculating that, if you've got a CEREC and you've got if you have that technology in your office, and that's one of the technologies that you use, you have to calculate you've got half hour to 45 minutes of downtime while your crown is milling and in the oven. It's like Dan said, we schedule in our other row some production during that time. Or if we have fillings to do on the same patient, then we're doing fillings while your crown is milling and crown is in the oven. That's a way to be efficient in that time as well. So as your treatment coordinator goes through the day before, she should be going through the treatment plans. She should be reviewing benefits. She should be reviewing outstanding balances. And as you are planning for the next day, and as you have your morning huddle in that morning, you say, "Oh, hey, we're gonna see Jackie today. Okay, well, Jackie, we're doing a crown. Well, Jackie, we also have two fillings scheduled to do on Jackie, but we haven't actually talked to her about it. So when we bring her back and we talk about it, let's review that with her and see if she'd be wanting to do those today. So finding ways to be more efficient, and then that way, as a doctor, you're doing your diagnosing, but your treatment coordinator or your office manager is helping you become more efficient with the diagnosing. It is a great way to approach that as well.
Yeah, I think if you use the golf analogy, because that's what we do in dental, is we do golf analogies, uh, is production per visit, that's like how far you drive, right? Like, oh yeah, I'm a 300 plus yard driver, it's like, oh, that's amazing. Um, and that there's that old phrase, drive for show, putt for dough, right? But the measure of efficiency, or how many strokes did it take you to actually get the ball in the hole, that's production per visit or per hour, excuse me, right? Because that's an efficiency gauge, where production per visit is how much am I accomplishing in a visit? Well, what if you have one visit that takes 8 hours? You know what I mean? Like you produced 2 grand, but it took 8 hours. Well,
Right.
that's how I play golf. I drive like a monster, and then I hit the ball 8,000 times to get it in the hole. I can drive on a good day, I can drive 280, 300 yards, but then I have to hit the ball, 18 more times before it gets in the hole. So you got to make sure you look at both metrics. I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's an important point, is that, we can sometimes go, oh, my production for visit is so good. I'm just, I'm killing it. And then you look at your production per hour and you're like, yeah, actually, you're terrible. Like you're super inefficient. And the other thing to think about is like, and what's nice about production per visit, and what's cool about that is that you can attach overhead to that. So you can actually look, because each production per visit metric comes with a set amount of overhead. Production per hour does too. It's a different calculation. But every time you have a visit, that includes turnover, that includes materials that are going to go into that. Production per hour averages all that out, so you can see, okay, how efficient are we doing? So really, we're talking today, and I think this is important to come back on this. Production per hour is about efficiency. It's a measure of how efficiently are you using your time. How well are you using your calendar? How well are you scheduling? Um, so, all right, let's create some challenges here, and let's talk about how you can audit your schedule. What does this look like? So, all right, grab a week. So anybody that's engaged or not driving right now, pull a week of your schedule, and then color code and highlight high value versus low value procedures. So just look what's coming up. So just take a look, get a marker out or whatever, how you want to do this. You want to do it on the computer, whatever, and highlight your high value versus your low value procedures. And then take a look at it, and maybe do this with your treatment coordinator or your office manager, or whoever he or she is, and say, where can I compress, delegate, and eliminate, or any of this stuff? How can we become more efficient? Who can be doing what? And then set a micro goal to increase your production per hour by 10% over the next 30 days. And Jared, you pitched this to me, but I'm going to say it, and I really like this quote. You found it. It's, if you want to earn more without working more, the answer isn't your fee schedule, it's your calendar. I like that. I have no idea who said it. I'm going to say you said it. I'm going to say by Dr. Jared Hill.
Yeah. Nope, I didn't say it, but you can give me credit. That'd be great.
We we have a fun thing going right now that it's us quoting somebody, quoting us, quoting them, right? On all of our
Yeah.
we do our summits. We've got a fun thing going with Matt Mulcock
Yeah.
and Ryan Isaac, to where now I don't even know who the original quotes are coming from anymore because it's become convoluted. Any
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
thoughts on that, Jared?
It's like you said, if you want to earn more without working more, it's not raising your fee schedule. It is to a certain degree. I mean, you can raise your fee
Sure.
schedule, but if you're in insurance and if you're in a network with anybody, you're just writing off the difference. You're not becoming more productive, you're not making any more money. So the way to do it, the way to start is to look at your schedule, look at your calendar, right? Figure out where you are, how you can be more efficient with that. And another really fun way to say this that we've heard, I don't know, it might have been you, it might have been Matt Mulcock, I don't know, whoever said this.
I would like to be quoted if it is me, though.
Okay, I'm gonna quote this. Dan said that revenue, or your daily production, right? Your revenue is vanity, but your profit per hour is sanity.
Yeah,
Meaning
that's way too smart to be me.
it's whoever said is genius, but because like I said before, the smaller things that you're doing all the time, if you're not productive per hour, if you're running around with your head cut off, you're going to burn out so fast. And ask me how I know, because I did that. I ran around for a long time with my head cut off. I was running so many things. I was so not efficient. Do you know why? Because I never looked at my metric. I never looked at the KPI. I
How
had
proactive are we with this stuff, right? Like that's the thing is it's and even in offices that love to track stuff, how well is the rubber meeting the road where they're going through this? I mean, what I mean, and I'm going to go back to the very first question I asked you. What did it take in because you kind of answered it, but what did it take for you to spur you on to get out of that mental state and that phase of just like being reactive and not proactive?
You know, I was to the point of burnout and of leaving dentistry. I had to really have somebody teach me the importance of of KPIs and numbers and data and using data to make data-driven decisions. I had to have somebody walk me through it and help me understand it and see the value of that. And then I had to have somebody hold me accountable for it. So I am like everybody on this earth. If no one holds you accountable for it, you're gonna let things slip and slide. That's just life. That's the way it is. And I ran a very busy practice. It's still very busy, but when you're running the practice and you're so busy day to day from 8 a.m. or 7:30 a.m. to 4 or 5 o'clock, whatever it is, you're so tired, and you can justify not looking at your data. It's just like working out. For me, if I don't get my workout in the morning before work, forget it. I'm not gonna do it after work. There's always an excuse. You may hit 2 or 3 days a week, but you're never gonna hit the 4 or 5 days that you need in order to be able to do that. So that's what I needed. It's all about, when we refer a lot to climbing a mountain. I've got Everest in this picture behind me, right? I've never climbed Everest, but we like to go hiking. We like to do these things. We like to use that analogy a lot. It's not about how hard you work as you're going up that mountain, right? It's about how smart you climb. There are tons of people who have been in incredible shape climbing Everest who didn't do it smartly, who made some dumb decisions along the way and they ended up dying. They're still
Yeah,
up there on the mountain. And so it's not about how hard you work. It's not about how hard you push yourself. It's about how smart you do it, because you can be the best dentist in the world. You're going to burn out if you don't do it the right way. And looking at your KPIs, your numbers, your data, measuring them on a weekly basis, monthly basis, yearly basis is the only way for you to gauge where you're at and make small corrections that will allow you to ascend faster, higher, and smarter without wearing out.
totally. I think to wrap up, we've been dropping some quotes here, so I'm going to drop one of my favorites from my boy Scrooge McDuck. You know, when he was freaking rich, that dude knew he had a money bin. That's how successful he
He,
is.
he swam in his gold. That's
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah. That's I mean, I can't think of anybody more successful than Scrooge McDuck. And he said, work smarter, not harder. And I think about that all the time. That's actually for real a quote that I think about all the time is work smarter, not harder. Who says you can't learn from cartoons?
That's right.
Okay, so again, we just challenge everybody to do the audit challenge. Take a look at your schedule, break it down, see how efficient you are. If you're not, oh, heaven help you if you're not tracking KPIs right now or metrics, but hopefully go and pull your production per hour and see what you can do to improve it. We'd love to help anybody that's interested in this also. We have a lot of resources for this type of thing. We'd be ecstatic to help out and show somebody how to do this. And we just want you guys to remember that we're doing a series here on various KPIs and how they impact your practice. And hopefully after listening to this, you've got a better idea of how these metrics, tracking them and creating goals from them can help to improve and optimize your workflow. And so hopefully you guys will join in with us next time. Jared, any parting shots before we take off?
Yeah, if you want to learn more about KPIs and using KPIs as a leader in your practice, and how to use them on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis, reach out to us. We have our Outfitters course, May 30th and 31st, which is a 2-day intense business course
That one's
where.
sold out, Jared. They'll have to come in September.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. You're right. May's out. We have one in September. Go to our website, look at the dates, and you can come and we can spend 16 credit hours of learning how to implement data, create a vision for your practice, get everybody rowing in the same direction. Just giving you a peace of mind as a leader of how and where your direction of your practice should go. So reach out to us, join Elevation Association. We'd love to have you as members and friends and as part of our tribe. Thanks.
Can I get an amen? Right on. Thanks, Jared. Okay. We'll see you guys next time. Appreciate you listening.